Okay, we're live.
Oh, this is live?
Well, no, we're not live.
Oh.
That's okay.
It's not like
This is
it's gonna
delete
be
mode, right? It's not second delay.
Wasn't the superintendent coming?
Yeah, the dump button.
Yeah, wait for him. I saw him a minute ago. He was, he was walking around the track and he
Oh, yeah?
come from the gym and,
Oh, good for
but
him.
he said he'd be right down, so.
A friend. So, I did speak to, well, maybe I'll wait till we start. I did speak to Nolan Rome. I don't know if you, I
I
caught.
saw your email, right? Yep. So,
We're just waiting for the superintendent who wanted to be here. And this meeting is being recorded. Brian Meek's father-in-law passed away, and he's at his father-in-law's wake. And our board member, Barbara Meyer Mitchell, is not well, so she's unable to be here. So for both of them, we are recording this meeting, and also just so everyone has all the information as to everything that's going on. We thought it'd be best that this would be kind of on the record, and people who couldn't be here would understand and would know what we talked about. So if everyone has a copy of the agenda, you'll see the different topics we're planning to talk about. I'm assuming you two gentlemen are from Friar, because you're new.
Yes.
You're not part of the regular characters.
actually, I don't know if you, the first item is actually an update on the PONUS project, which is really from Jim Giuliano.
Okay.
If you wanna start with that,
Okay.
we could probably start with that before the superintendent gets
Okay,
there.
perfect. So, and for people who are speaking, if you speak a little more loudly, just because we want it to be recorded. So I will call the Facilities Committee meeting for March to order at 6:07 PM. And we have a lot of topics to discuss tonight. Our first topic is a review of status on the Post Ridge STEAM School KA project. So Jim Giuliano, our project manager, will share with us where things are.
Well, things are moving along. I don't know if any of you have been by the project at all. There's a lot of construction activity going on. Excavation, as well as we had our first pour of concrete early last week. We also are active in the existing building in terms of getting the teachers prepared. I think Joe, we had a purge last Thursday, which the moving company provided some bins and the construction company provided a dumpster for teachers to purge all their old items and kind of right-size their equipment and items for the move that is anticipated or the move that is going to happen at the end of the school year. We're gonna move the second floor, as well as a good portion of the first floor into the gymnasium. So that way it'll allow us to do some asbestos abatement activities, as well as renovation work, installation of sprinkler system, HVAC system, HVAC units up on the roof. All that is going to happen over the summer. Up until that time, we're gonna be continuing with foundation work, and steel work will start, I believe, the second week in April. So.
Steel work?
Yeah. So, things are moving along, quite nicely there, and moving pretty quickly.
And all that, I know there was some kind of challenging site work.
There was, we did do some controlled blasting, that went very well. The principal there handled it extremely well, managed that process very well. We're done with that at this time, and, just continuing on with, mass site work.
Great. Okay, anything else?
No. That's it, I think
We are minus 2 portables now.
All right.
Portables were removed,
Were those leased or were those owned by us?
leased.
least.
So, they're gone. And do we need to schedule anything with neighbors or anything like that? Are we in good shape there or anything?
I think we're in good shape there. Yeah.
Okay. I know there was some discussion, where's Alan, with because we're gonna change the drainage, make it better, but the
That's
city
true.
hasn't really addressed.
Yeah.
Have they addressed any of the issues there, Alan?
No, they scheduled some dredging on some of those areas to make sure, to maintain those waterway clear.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure where they are, but that's a separate issue downstream from Bonus.
Right.
At the same time, that's part of the concern when we present this project to the zoning commission, that they are flooding the neighborhood and our project directly and indirectly contribute to the system.
Yeah.
And that's a concern of the zoning commission as well as the neighbors kind of thing. But we are actually doing a change order to increase our detention area, doubling the size of it, to try to delay the release of water from our site onto the system, double the length of time. It's substantial cost, it's about $300,000. So we are taking those steps to do the right thing for the neighbors,
Yeah.
for the whole drainage system. Because it impact all the way down from the school to Holmes Avenue, all the way to the river. So by us holding the water longer, helps the whole overall process. So.
If you, just for the record, when we did have that public meeting with the neighbors, that's all that's all they wanted to talk about, and they thought it was our, doing, when in fact, really, DPW
Right.
needed to do some work downstream of us.
As part of this project, we did not more than, but we do everything we can do financially and responsibly do what I think we can do to help out.
Yeah.
But I think, this is where our limits is financially as well as responsibly.
Right. But you think the city is doing certain things?
Oh, yeah, we're looking at, but the whole process may take a couple of years. So it's not so simple as, because there's different wetland area downstream.
Yeah.
So they got flooded. So there's they gotta evaluate watershed areas, size of piping between each wetland areas and everything else. It's a lengthy process.
Okay,
Okay.
well, we appreciate that color.
One other thing I think we should also put on the record and talk about is the issue of the utility tunnels and the status of that. Maybe you can update the committee on the status of that. I think as the committee remembers, the bids actually came back on this project quite favorable and came in essentially right on budget. The only item that was potentially pushing the project over budget was the issue of the utility tunnels that had been identified after the original scope of the project was put together. We had some leaks in those tunnels that our facilities department had to conduct some emergency repairs, and that sort of raised the broader issue of, well, what is the condition of those tunnels generally? And while we're undertaking all of the work at this school, we felt it would be advisable to make sure that those tunnels were all in good shape so that we don't have a problem down the road. Now, I know that these gentlemen have been engaging resources to evaluate the status of those tunnels. In total, if we were doing a full, complete replacement of the tunnels, I think the estimate had put it approximately $2 million. Is that correct, Jim?
There was 1.3 million for the total complete replacement. So.
I'm sorry, Jim, let me, so the reason why it's $2.1 million, because in order to, we're out the bids generally speaking come within the number, but we actually short a little bit, like $700,000. So we actually, right now, we are reducing our contingency to, by $700,000. So we have, at least we have a $1.2 million set aside for contingency.
We only have 1.2 million?
Yeah, usually we want to maintain a 5% contingency, but we don't have that. But at the same time, so that's why the number, 1.3 million plus about 700,000 came with $2.1 million.
Right, and also then I know there were some positives, but then 300,000, I don't know where I saw those numbers.
Yeah.
So right now,
For land
I
use.
think we're at about 198,000, taking into the deducts as well as the change orders that we're aware of at
plus, now, so 198,000 plus the 700,000?
Correct.
And in terms of the evaluation of the tunnels or the pipes in the tunnels and what, work you anticipate may or may not be required, or do you have,
We don't
any
have.
update on that or not?
We do have an update, it's not definitive at this time. We went into the tunnels over the February break to do some asbestos abatement of the insulation on the piping. And then we had a testing company test the thickness with an ultrasonic piece of equipment, test the thickness of the walls of the piping. They went in there on March 14th, did various tests, could not get access to all the areas in the tunnel, but did, get a good sampling of what's in there. It's not as bad as we thought it was going to be. We don't, or haven't, it wasn't brought about that we need to replace all the piping. We do possibly need to replace a little bit more than we were hoping, but we also need to look into it further as well, because of the areas that we're unable to gain access to due to, again, the piping, insulation. We wanna test again after school has been dismissed, and we can get in there with the abatement company, remove all the insulation, and then be able to test in the other areas that are suspect.
And when are we looking to do that?
That would be at the end of school
Okay.
year.
And is this where you showed us a sample at the NFCC last
That's right.
week of that pipe, from the corrosion?
Yes.
It's important to know that this is the heating system pipe only.
Versus,
Hot and cold water, waste lines, other pipes that run in the tunnel, but this is heating only.
so do those get shut down during the summertime?
No,
No? Okay.
So I think sort of where we are at this point is, and this sort of is bleeding into the discussion which we're going into next, which is, an update on the financial status of the various projects. With respect to PONUS, whether or not we're going to need additional funding to deal with this pipe issue or not, still seems to be,
Not not
You know, not-
completely defined.
not completely defined. Essentially, we know that there's an issue that's gonna cost some money, but whether or not it will rise to a level that requires us to find additional resources, or whether there's enough money within the resources that have already been appropriated, because there are contingencies and so on built into these budgets. I think that issue is not yet been determined.
Are we under any obligation under the state or our own regs that there has to be so much contingency? I mean, we're just getting started, we have another 18 months to go.
The state always likes to see at least 5% contingency held by the owner. And they, when they look at the budget, when we go for our PCR, our plan completion reviews, and even design development reviews, they'll look at the overall budget and question whether or not the owner's carrying enough contingency.
And so they,
But it's not a hard, fast requirement.
but this will come out at some point,
Yeah.
especially if we have to really spend $2 million.
Right.
Okay, so,
So right now, I guess the quick conclusion for PONUS is project's on track, timeline's on track. We've made some adjustments to our plans for the water retention, which is gonna cost us some money, but we have some offsets, but net, we're $200,000 dipping into the contingency because of that. And then we've got this underground tunnel issue, which potentially we have enough in our contingency, but we're cutting it close this early in the game. We'll just have to watch it, but financially, right now, we're even. Bruce Kimmel,
Mike, you said the water retention issue will cost us some money.
300,000.
The city has a fund for flood remediation. I don't know what their plans are. They do cover, I know there were certain issues around off PONUS down near Lloyd and around there. And there are issues that the city is looking at. in that area. I don't know,
Well, it's, really the issue, Alan can explain better than I, but there is a problem there. The city hasn't dealt with it for a long time and they need to, but by building what we're building, we're you could be,
Okay.
exacerbating the issue. We were already planning to do a bunch of stormwater retention. We're just having to expand that because what's downstream, this can't handle it.
So the regulation requires to retain water on site. So a lot of when you do a development, they actually have an underground tank, it's supposed to dissipate through the ground. The problem with the site is we have ledge and we have clay soil on top. So we cannot put it in the ground because all it does is just sit there, it doesn't dissipate. And also potentially it could run on top of the ledge and go to adjacent property owners. So we could not retain the water, so we can only detain it. By detaining it, you're delaying the water to leave the site during a heavy rainstorm, which is good, because once you delay it, then it is not impacting the system at the same time, so we delay. But
when
at
you
some
say,
point,
when you say downstream, what streets are you talking about, what area?
oh, you go to Hunter Lane, there's a little bridge there, you go to like wetland to the right,
Yeah.
and then continue another couple more sections before you get to the river. So it's all those wetland area get pretty much flooded, so that's part of the problem. But what happens when it gets flooded, it actually backs the water up, all the way up to, Frog Lane. Is that where, that's where
Frog Lane, yeah.
That's what people are complaining about, and you got a picture of those flooding areas and stuff like that. So what happened when wetland get flooded, the pipe the water doesn't flow through it anymore, so it backs up the system all the way upstream and comes out of the catch basins. So, again, by delaying, so what happened, the regulation requires to hold the water on site, or keeps the water on site, but we can only hold it, so they want us to hold it longer. So after a heavy rainstorm, the system has the ability to dissipate some of the water downstream, and then we release our water slowly. That's the strategy.
Okay? So I think that's bonus, unless there's anything else to discuss?
That pretty much wraps up.
Okay, so now we're gonna move on to our next projects. What's relevant here is, in order to qualify for state reimbursement, we have to file something called the EDO 49, which is a state form. Those are due by June 30th of every year. So we're under the gun to get these filed. There's a very strict procedure. And, as part of this, when you file an EDO 49, your project has to be fully funded. Even though you're gonna get state reimbursement, it has to be fully funded. So we've got 4 projects, which we're now gonna talk about in detail. The new ones are Jefferson, the Global Academy, North Global Academy, which is the IB school, elementary school we're proposing for the old Columbus building, and the Cranberry project. We also have Columbus at Ely in here because that project we are refiling. So the board did vote for the what are called the ed specs, which is this application, did vote just last Tuesday on those for Columbus at Ely and for Jefferson. And that's because those plans are ready and we're ready to move forward. We have cost estimates, designs, we have everything done. We'll be hearing more as we discuss each project, but just so you understand where we are in the stage of these projects. Global Academy, that's what the gentlemen here from Fires are here to talk to us about. They've been doing the cost estimating, and there are a number of things that we need to talk about that are in flux. As Tom alluded to, each one of these projects is coming in more than we have funding for. And so that's one of the reasons for tonight's meeting is to discuss this, figure out, what's the magnitude of this and how can we proceed. We've already had some discussions with the city, and, we're working on it. So let's talk about each one of these projects, just so you understand the context of where we are. So the Jefferson project, the architects did present this to us at a facilities meeting in February. And, the funding's there, but the cost estimates are coming in higher. So let's talk about Jefferson first.
Well, yeah, with all the projects, if you don't mind, maybe I'll take it a little bit out of sequence, just because the Columbus and Ely project, is the simplest one. As you stated, the Board of Ed reapproved the educational specifications that were originally submitted in our grant application of 2017. And we're going through the process with, city council to, approve the resolutions and then also, hopefully, add, excuse me, the shortfall of which we, are currently, experiencing, of almost just under $4 million. That also, that shortfall of $4 million also includes about $1 million of escalation costs, that is, a result of the delay in the project. To give a little history, we submitted the project in, June of 2017. There were some issues with the state in which the project, had to meet certain requirements. We believe we met those requirements in the timeframe presented to us. There was special legislation that was implemented by Office of School Construction Grants and Review. The Office of School Construction Grants pushed back on us, and instead of continuing the argument with that, we decided we will resubmit the whole grant application again for this coming June 30th. With that said, obviously, we have drawings that are complete and ready for a plan completion review. We would like to have discussions with the state to see if we can possibly start construction before the project is put on the priority list, or, the priority list is issued, which, that priority list is issued every December 15th. It's probably a long shot, but we're gonna try anyway to get going on that project, because we are so far along with the progress on that. So that pretty much wraps up the.
Couple of things I think worth adding, on this project, and really all of these projects. It's interesting, if you go back to Alan was showing me the submissions from the original capital budget, when this project was first conceived, and the original estimates on this project from Silver Petroselli, in fact, were in the, a bit over, I think it was $46 million, is that right? So actually, it's remarkable how close the original estimate was to where we're now seeing the updated cost estimate coming in on. But of course, in the intervening period, the city, through the capital budget process, was looking to scale projects and to try to squeeze money out of projects. And through that process, of course, we ended up with 41.9 million, but the 45.9 does look to be where we're at now. As Jim had indicated, in order to file the EDO 49, you also, or at the time you file the EDO 49, you also have to file your cost estimate with the state on the project.
That's right.
And you have to demonstrate that you have the funding available in place, the appropriations are in place to support the project in order to get on the priority list. And that's why, this was before you tonight, is to sort of explain what the problem is, explain what the urgency is, and then hopefully figure out what is the best solution going forward. And we don't have a whole lot of time, of course, because we have to have this in place and ready to go for a filing this June if we want to stay on track on this project. I don't know whether the superintendent, do you want to jump in at any point here?
Well, I
or
wanted
how do you
to,
wanna-
I perhaps would want to address this at the end after you cover all four, because I think we're gonna need a global solution.
When in June, is it mid-June or end of June?
June 30th.
Okay, right at the end, okay.
June 30th.
That's the deadline.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's Columbus. So wanna tackle next, Jeff?
Sure, we'll go into Jefferson Global Academy in Cranberry. Back in October, we solicited architectural firms to do a conceptual design as well as conceptual cost estimate to verify the budgets that we had for these projects. So we hired Fryer Associates to do a conceptual design on Columbus, renovate as new project, and then Antonazzi.
Old Columbus.
Old Columbus, excuse me, and then Antonazzi Associates did Jefferson and Cranberry. So, we had those done, those conceptual designs done, as well as the estimates, and, you know, as we're sitting here, the estimates are a little bit higher than what we had originally appropriated for these projects. Obviously, that causes a problem for us to submit the grant applications because we don't have proper amount appropriated. Jefferson School is a renovate is new with a new gymnasium wing, as well as a new stairwell to go between the cafeteria and the exterior, where the kids will go out and play after their lunch period. They typically go out and play, have a recess period, so there was no direct access without going through the school. So those are the two additions that we're looking at. It also, excuse me, you know, provides for better scheduling of lunchways and gym class, because right now your gym, cafeteria, and auditorium are all being shared by one space. The other thing with the renovation at Jefferson, it eliminates the drive under and the parking under the building by enclosing that space and adding pre-K and kindergarten rooms in that location, as well as looking at what, you know, from an operational standpoint, getting rid of the electric heat and putting in a gas-fired heating system, which would be much more energy efficient and lower your operational costs. Obviously, new windows throughout, and a total new architectural upgrade within the building. The other important thing that we looked at too is Jefferson was a open classroom concept, where we have movable partitions, and the movable partitions really are in disrepair, and quite honestly, they don't really keep the noise level between different classes at a rate where, you know, you don't get, you can't get too much transmission, or you get too much transmission, excuse me, between those partitions. So all those issues would be solved, as well as you'll have a building up to a, what they call a 20-year standard.
Just to interject for a second, you know, it's not like, when you said there's no drive into the building, it's not like we chose that under.
Exactly.
Under code that's no longer allowed.
That's true.
Dangerous.
It doesn't meet the
Security.
security, it doesn't meet the security, state security, infrastructure requirements. The other thing about Jefferson too, that I neglected to point out, is that it will also improve the circulation. It'll separate the parent and bus drop-off. You know, and that's a big issue in that area with the busy intersection and the on and off ramps for Route 7. So, any questions on Jefferson?
So in terms of the financials, essentially, the revised cost estimate is now $33.6 million. There's existing appropriations of $18.9 million, and there's $9 million in the 1920 capital budget that has been recommended by the Planning Commission and recommended by the mayor. The capital budget for 1920 is now in its final stages of approval. It does go to the Common Council for final approval at their meeting, their first meeting in April. I believe it will be going to the Planning Committee of the Council on April 4th, if I have their meeting schedule correct. I believe they're meeting the first Thursday of the month, and then the following Tuesday it would go for final approval with the Common Council, I believe on April 9th. So the total funding, assuming the $9 million remains in the budget after it gets through the Common Council, is $27.9 million, leading to a shortfall of 5.7 million. I'm reading from a sheet that I've given you, so there are some offsetting capital projects that I think we can tap into. And in this case, we have money that was appropriated for BMS systems, building management systems, and fire alarm systems. Those appropriations predated the development of the facilities master plan, and I think we could apply those, or ask the city to apply those to those two projects to cover part of the shortfall, which would then leave a net shortfall of $4,652,000 on the Jefferson project.
Yeah, and also we should mention, Jefferson is the last school we built in 1972. And it is at a really difficult site, less than ideal site, and we did try to consider other options. But it is our most walked-to school in the district. And therefore, we felt there was nothing in the vicinity, and trying to move the school to St. Philip's really wasn't a viable option. And there really was no other land other than Lowe's, and the city values Lowe's at over $50 million. So even though the store, I think, is on the list of stores to be closed, we're not in a position to buy that property. So this was our best option to rework with it. I will say, I think Antonazzi did a really good job on that project, working what they're working with. And I'm very glad to hear you say now that natural gas is on the table as an option, because we weren't sure there for a bit.
Well, as far as I know right now, obviously, we're in the early stages of it, but they do believe that they can bring natural gas to the building.
Okay. Great,
Can I
so,
just interrupt,
yeah, of course.
for 1 minute? And I know you had mentioned about the open classrooms, which was really big quite a while ago, I think back in the
1972.
early 70s, so that is not conducive to learning when you have the movable walls, so to speak, and then the noise level, and it's, you need to have a classroom that's, you need to be cohesive on, and I agree, so I think that's needed, absolutely needed.
How many portables are there right now?
10.
Still 10,
So there are over 200 students in portables.
half a school almost.
Their enrollments come down, but yeah, now it's about almost half the school. It's tight. Okay, so should we, unless there's anything else on Jefferson? Yeah, Norwalk Global Academy?
I'll just do it briefly on that. We have the gentlemen, Bob and Adam from Fire Associates, that'll get a little bit more detail and about their process. But again, we went through a conceptual design, and Fire took it a step further, looking at not only renovating his new project for Global Academy, but also a new project. And I won't steal their thunder, but I think one of the reasons why they wanted to take a look at a new building there was the cost differential was very minimal when you look at new versus renovated new. And so I'll leave that there, let those gentlemen speak to the project a little bit more in depth. And if you don't mind, I'll go on to Cranberry.
Okay, yeah, all right.
Cranberry, we were looking at an addition for a cafeteria to separate the cafeteria from the gymnasiums. We're also looking at new windows, adding air conditioning, architectural improvements to the media center, a building management system, and I think that was it. So, again, we had Antonazzi look at this project, again, came up with a conceptual design. We looked at the design of the new cafeteria, worked with the school on that, and the estimate came in, obviously, higher than what we had money appropriated for. One of the things that I did ask the architect to do when estimating this project was give me a shopping list of the costs of each of the items, because I suspected that we were gonna be over budget, and if we can do any one or combination of 2 or 3 projects based on the budget, I asked them to break up the pricing in that order. So they did do that for us. Obviously, the biggest cost would be the addition that think that was at about 5.5 million all in. So, you know, with what is appropriated, we may be able to squeeze in another project. But I think there's also a bigger picture that you were looking at possibly doing there as well, so.
So if we look at the numbers, I think, last year, the city had approved $8.9 million
That's right.
for Cranberry, and then this year, through that approval process Tom was talking about, we have another $2 million, which was theoretically for air conditioning. So, you know, we should have, a month from now, $10.9 million as a commitment from the city, for
Correct.
doing work there. One topic we've been talking about for a long time is, you know, that building was built in 1959, and had really, nothing's been done to it. It was built the exact same school, exact same time as Fox Run. But Fox Run had their cafeteria added already, had some electrical upgrades, so they got some attention. This school has gotten zero. And so I, you know, and I think Brian Meek, whose kids go to Cranberry, have been saying, is this really where, should we be spending millions of dollars on this old building? We have all this land there, should we not look at potentially starting from scratch and do like we see done in other districts? I don't think we've ever done it here, but, you know, Bedard Thomas and I went and looked at Tokenique School in Darien, and they literally built a new school. The kids went to the old school, kids moved to the new school, they tore the old school down. We could do that at Cranberry if it came to it. So there was some talk, you know, I was talking about this maybe in the fall, and you know, didn't really go very far. But I think now, I don't know what the total, I don't remember the exact numbers, but I know the numbers have come in substantially higher than the 10.9 we were talking about.
Yeah, we're at about 17 million for all the renovations that we'd like to do.
So the work that was spec'd out is 6.3 million now at this point, over the 10.9 million that would be available, assuming the 2 million is appropriated.
Yeah. Okay, so at this point, we've got Jefferson at 5.7, Cranberry at 6.3, Columbus at Ely 4.0.
3.991, so 4.6.
I would call that 4.0. Okay, so, and then maybe
Actually, I have a
before the gentleman, I know not everyone had, I guess that sheet was there at the handout. Not, before the gentleman from Fire gets started, maybe we could just have a quick overview of Global Academy, you know, what it looks like number-wise, you know, renovating is new, and then we'll go into some more detail with them, but just so we can have the big picture, everyone can digest that.
So, Fire did do a renovate as new as their main, review, and that, came in at 34,685,000, about 4.9, almost $5 million over.
34 points, right?
685.
38.7 million.
38.
I'm sorry, 34.7.
34.7 million, which was, versus the budget was,
29.8.
okay, so right there, so we're at 4.7, so $4.9 million.
Right.
Yes.
Wow, those are some big numbers.
You know, that project was, again, separate the cafeteria from the gymnasium, renovate as new. They looked at circulation, improving the circulation there, because I know we have many problems with bus and parent drop-off. And again, like I said, they took it a step further to look at, you know, the building, since they knew that tonight, because I told them the building would be empty. They said, you know, you have an opportunity here to take a look at knocking it down and building a new building, improving your circulation and work. And the other thing about it is, and I'm stealing all their thunder here, is right-sizing the building.
Right.
What'd you say?
Right size.
Right-sizing the building, right now.
I know what that is.
Oh, okay.
For those who don't know, it's, the state sets very strict requirements on what the square footage can be of a school based on the number of students and how many square feet per student in a classroom, what the hallway size can be. Because this building was built in 1938, before those rules were in existence, there is more square footage there than is allowed for the number of students we're planning to have there. So what the state does is they want to penalize you, and so they then defund you on, you know, the part that you're violating. So, you know, we'll go through detail, but that's what this is all about.
That's right. So I guess with that said,
Do we want them to switch places with us? Why don't we have you guys come up here?
Oh, good, now, Mr. Lowe,
And Mr. Lowe, just one
please.
quick note, is that part of the meeting, the enrollment shortfall, we have about 900 seats. It's, the IB school is actually where we gained 400, when that's renovated and occupied, that's when we can take the reduction of the overall enrollment issues.
Yeah.
The other one, we're doing Ponus now, we created 450 seats, but we're gonna move Jefferson in there temporary. And then after Jefferson renovated, that's where we really gained the space.
that's right, it's you have 4 major projects that will satisfy your 900 seat shortage.
Right, so I actually, because I was at the Newark Facilities Construction Commission hearing last week, as I remember that, and I went to the city, the Common Council's Land Use Committee last week, with all of us, a little party. And, if you recall, there was a lot of questions about demographics. So I did have a long call with Mike Zuba on demographic projections. And I sent to the mayor and to the superintendent my discussion, and I was gonna forward it to you as well. Just ran out of time before I had to come here. But I'll send that to you, but effectively, in terms of the demographics, the reason we're doing this whole facilities master plan is to add seats. We have a shortfall now, and these kids are jammed in closets and portables and all sorts of places. It's not that we were expecting enrollment to grow and therefore we needed to build for future enrollment growth. We were building for existing, which I think some of the members of the council didn't realize or didn't appreciate. So at this point, the numbers are spot on in terms of, just for people who are interested, let me just pull this up so I don't speak out of turn. But in fact, if anything, the estimates have come in a little higher or the actuals have come in a little higher than projected. But we're pretty much exactly where we were supposed to be. So in 2007, our enrollment bottomed at 10,595, and it's been creeping up, and up. And the study had projected we'd be at 11,431. We were on October 117, we were at 11,494. And on October 118, they projected 11,470. And we were actually 11,549. So we were almost 100 kids higher. So, but still, in the end, they're doing an updated projection for us, and they're gonna take, they had originally taken the numbers out to 25, 26, they're now gonna take them out to 28, 29. We'll get these later next month. But they really don't see any big changes, and if you looked at their projections when they did this 3 years ago, the numbers pretty much are 11,600 and kind of plateau there roughly. And they don't, at this point, expect major changes. They say that, the model's working, and there are some new apartment projects proposed. They're waiting to get all the detail on those before they finalize these projections out to 28, 29. But, pretty much, there are no big surprises there. Everything's coming in enrollment-wise, as the model predicted. So there's no questions, but the fact is, we are 900 seats short now, and we have been, and we continue to be, and we'll be adding the bulk of those seats at the K-5 section of Ponus Ridge and at the new Ponus Ridge.
I have no idea what.
Did you disconnect it, Nancy?
No, not me.
No, but it's giving us the low battery signal.
Oh, it started with a low battery, but you would have thought it was charged. Oh, you would think it would have been charged. Plugged in? But it was low, it was at 7% when I started it. And I don't know why it's not charging. What's that?
This is plugged in.
Was this plugged in here? Okay, well, I guess we'll tape it till it runs out. But it was at 7% when we started, so it's done 45 minutes like people said.
It's just giving us an erroneous message.
Okay, so that was it on demographics. Now we'll move camera. To make sure we capture this. Okay. I don't think you can see too well, but I'll do that. Okay, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us. My name is Bob Roach with Fire Architecture.
Adam Palmer with Fire Architecture.
So as you've heard, we looked at the existing Columbus school to accommodate a new IB elementary school. As part of the program for that, it was the district's desire to add 150 students. We're currently at about 300, so we're gonna make this a school that accommodate 450 students. And adding program to that, besides the classrooms, we need to house those students, looking at adding a STEM classroom, learning commons, separating providing a new cafeteria separate from the gymnasium, and providing new kitchen to accommodate that. Trying to work within the state space standards. Doing so, we generated a program and a draft educational specification to accommodate all of those needs. Our original charge, as Mr. Giuliano said, was looking at a renovate like new project. So taking the existing building built in 1938, renovating that for a life of 20 years at a minimum, all systems in there, and putting a small addition on there to accommodate that additional program that I mentioned previously. And in doing so, some of the issues that Adam's going to show you with the planning was we had some site constraints to work with, just tight sight lines. We had some ledge there. We've got traffic issues, and then on top of that, was just trying to meet all the programmatic needs and trying to do all that within an efficient budget. So we have two options that we came up with. We explored the renovate like new, and then afterwards we explored doing a new option, which would be to raise the existing building and then provide all the program on the site that just met the educational specification. The issue with the renovate like new was that you had some space overages because the existing space in the basement that you had down there wasn't desirable, and then we would right-size the classrooms with the new option. We had the opportunity to do that, so we came in right on the target for right-sizing the building, as was previously mentioned.
So moving to the first option, which was renovate as new. Reusing the existing building, which is 2 stories above grade and then a partial basement, which is along the Chestnut Street side of the school. Separating out the gymnasium and cafeteria, which are currently shared space, we would build a new 2-story addition on the west side of the existing building. On this plan, north is pointing up. In that new addition, we would build new cafeteria and kitchen, which could make use of the delivery/parent drop-off drive that's along the south side of the site here. There would also be some classrooms and learning commons, which were new program pieces for the IB program. Some of the constraints that we tried to work with and weren't able to fully resolve in reusing the building were, right now, the bus drop-off is along Chestnut Street, which was something we were not really a big fan of conceptually because of the traffic pains that brings. The parent drop-off, we're reversing the flow so that parents will come from Chestnut along the south side of the school and then exit out a new curb cut onto Mulvoy on the west side of the property. That could be.
Do we own the land all the way to Mulvoy? I didn't realize we did.
Correct.
Yes, the city does. And we did have Malone McBroom involved in this study. They looked at this, they looked at traffic sight lines and everything back there. Obviously, this is, with anything that we're showing you tonight, we would have to take it to the next step if you wanted to proceed with any of these, to talk some more with town staff, planners, and get some real buy-in.
Additionally, with this, the existing parking lot would remain essentially as is. But with the addition of 150 students comes additional staff. Parking lot you have now is pretty tight, it's pretty much at capacity, so when you add staff, you really do need more parking. With leaving the existing building where it is, you cannot expand that existing parking lot, so we would have to build an additional parking lot that would be on the west side of the property, allowing the field to remain. It would be smaller than it is right now, but allow the field to remain at the the north part of the site, just to the left of the existing parking lot is where you have a large ledge outcropping, which was a limiting factor on where we could expand without having to do, too much blasting and incur that cost, and really what would that gain you? So we tried to leave that as is and work around it, while maintaining the existing building, adding on, and then reconfiguring the parking driveways as best we could within the confines.
I'm also, if I could just interjecting, and that parking is tight as it is, so.
Correct.
I think it's gonna be a tight squeeze if we
Right.
have to continue to even expand out and add,
Right.
it's tight.
So moving to the floor plan, the large square on the right-hand side is the existing building, new additions, on the left-hand side. So as I stated before, on the first floor, the new addition would house cafeteria, kitchen, and learning commons. The second floor would have learning commons, so those two spaces would be stacked on top of each other. And then, 3 fifth-grade classrooms with some other support space in that new addition. In the
Could you just
existing.
point that out on
Oh,
the graph
yes,
there?
absolutely. Yep.
Can't quite see it.
So cafeteria here with the kitchen on the first floor, learning commons, and then on the second floor, learning commons stacked on top of that with 3 fifth-grade classrooms and then other support spaces. In the existing building itself, on the ground level, you would have your admin suite where, essentially where it is now, it would grow in size. And then your kindergarten classrooms, first grade classrooms, there's a requirement that kindergarten, first grade be on grade level. Second grade can be on the second level depending on your elevator access and sprinkler systems. There are requirements in the code that allow you to put the second grade up on the second level if need be. Gymnasium would now be just a gymnasium. Right now it's shared with the cafeteria. With the cafeteria and kitchen moving out, we could repurpose this space, expand the music program from where it is right now, make it much more usable. Moving to the second floor, here you would, in the existing building, house your second, third, and fourth grade classrooms, with fifth grade, as I stated previously, being in the new addition. Media center, essentially where it is now, faculty where it is now, this space will be fully renovated and modernized. So with this, you have an existing building with large corridors, with varying classroom sizes that are above the current state standards, which bring you pretty much close to your allowable square footage for reimbursement. But you still need to build the addition because you need to separate the second grade, or the cafeteria from the gymnasium. And with adding the 150 students, you really need more classrooms in order to have the other support spaces that you need for your program. All that adding up, we're at 63,500 square feet for renovating and adding on to the existing building. Part of what has to be considered here, which Bob will touch on as we get more into the budget, is with the hazmat report, the extent of abatement in the existing building added a lot of cost to the project. And once we got that report back, we were already starting to think about the idea of knock the building down, build a new building, right-size it, make better use of the site. And then when we got the hazmat report, it really became more abundantly clear to us that we really need to look at building a new building to get a better comparison of what that would cost and weigh the pros and cons of renovating versus all new construction.
You said the proposal here is 63,000 square feet?
63 and a half, correct.
What is the state limit now for that number of students?
Yeah, it was around,
I think it's about 10,000 lots, right?
yeah, 54,800, I'm reading that.
And if this project go forward like this, what does that mean in terms of state reimbursement? Is that
I'm gonna get to that
Okay.
in a later slide.
All right. It's scaring me.
So moving to the other option of raising the existing building, building all new, we can right-size the building, orient the building properly, adjust the sight lines, the approach to the building to accommodate getting bus traffic and parent traffic off of the street while keeping them both separate from each other and increasing the size of the existing parking lot. So with this, we're proposing a parent-only drop-off from Chestnut, reconfiguring the driveway, roadway on the south side of the school to be bus-only drop-off, again, with a new curb cut at Mulvoy, so that the buses would enter here. The students would exit the bus on the proper side, go straight into the school, and not have to cross a road or a driveway. So it's a safe passage for the students to get on and off the bus. Again, staying as best we can, staying away from the existing lead outcropping. And now we've created more of a protected environment for the field to exist with the buildings, providing some barrier from outside elements. Existing parking lot would be expanded. This area, there are some underground utilities which would have to be reused, reconfigured, so keeping this as a parking lot was beneficial. We already have a curb cut, it's a traffic pattern that people know, so we thought, rather than try to take a new parking lot, put it all the way over here, completely flip the site on its head, let's take what we know, expand upon it, make it better. Moving into the building, on the first floor, we can have gymnasium, cafeteria separate from each other, but adjacent to each other, which allows you to, if you have a nighttime event, you can lock down the building so no one can get further into the building, keeping your large assembly spaces near the front of the building, allowing the building to be safer for those night events. Administration wing would be right at the front of the school, so you have good visual coverage of the parking lot, of the bus drop-off and the parent drop-off. Music classroom here adjacent to the gymnasium, so now you have all your loud spaces congregated together, keeping them away from the educational spaces so that you can have focus on education without hearing some 8-year-old really wailing on a trumpet that doesn't know what they're doing. Kindergarten and first grade and second grade are now on the ground level. Second level would have third, fourth, and fifth grade. We've accommodated the learning commons, added the STEM lab, created this common core where the classrooms are around the perimeter and then other support spaces are in the middle. It allows you to create an environment where it's not just one long run of a hallway. You have these connecting corridors here. It allows the theme that we were learning about with the IB curriculum. You can start to build this neighborhood feel into the building, whereas with reusing the existing building, you're stuck with the old layout from the 1930s. You're repurposing that. Here we can start to tailor the new building to meet the curriculum, let the two of them work together. With all of this, we are just under the state's allowable square footage for reimbursement, so we take away that penalty for being above and losing out on that reimbursement. And that'll hand it over to Bob, and he can show you the numbers.
So with the two options that Adam went over, we compared them side by side, and this was our first pass at the numbers. I think Jim has expanded upon this in his versions of it. So we basically take the square foot size, and this was done with our estimator of Pan American Consulting. We got our construction costs, and then we estimated our soft costs. The state is putting a cap on soft costs. Renovation, they put a cap of 17%, and new construction 15%. So I've noted in here where we estimated the soft costs, which are over. We had 24.6 for the renovation option, and option 2, new construction, we were at 24.5% for soft costs. So then from there, we are estimating our state reimbursement. Down below, we took our ineligible costs, so we took the overage out of the estimated soft costs, and we estimated our eligible costs, and then from there, we applied the state reimbursement factor. With a renovation, you would get 33.21%, with new construction, 23.21%. So I've estimated how much the state is contributing versus how much Norwalk is contributing. But the bottom line is the budgets were, much closer than we had originally anticipated when we started looking at the project. In part is because of the sizes. I mean, with the renovation, you're at a lower dollar per square foot cost, but you're at much higher much more square feet, at 63.5, versus the new construction where we're right on target with the program, $53.5, but we're closer to $500 a square foot. That was part of it. And as Adam mentioned as well, with the hazardous materials report, based on the amount of, nothing's friable, nothing's dangerous, just the materials that were built with at the time, that we would, need to get rid of everything with any renovation project. By the time we took everything out, we would be down to studs in some places just because of the plaster and the finishes. And even with the new construction, we weren't able to just take the whole building down in one shot and dispose of it as such. It would have to be done in stages, based on the amount of material that we have. So that means, separate trucks, separate piles, lots of monitoring. So there's costs built in for that as well. So that's why the numbers are a lot closer than we initially anticipated.
So the new option does include the demolition of the existing buildings?
Demolition
and
of the
the
schools.
and the hazard.
You said it doesn't.
It does, yeah.
Yeah,
Yes, that's correct.
I'm just verifying.
And then from there, I think we have your numbers, Jim, if you want to touch
Oh,
upon
I could
those.
really see that now.
Oh, yeah. Go to the next one. To some-
Yeah. This is probably the better way to do it. On the way the estimator estimates the project and the way the state uses the uniformat estimation method, some of the hard construction costs are actually considered soft costs. So what I did was I backed out those hard construction costs, which are site costs. I forget exactly what they are, we can look at the detail in the estimate. So I backed those out. They do have some soft costs in there, like architectural fees, state permit fees, materials testing, things of that nature. I backed out the site costs, put them into the construction costs, and then added some additional soft costs that were not included, that are typical on these types of projects that were not included in the estimator's estimate. So there is a little bit of a variation between my estimate and what the architects came up with. But essentially, you're looking at, not much of a difference between what Fryer came up with in terms of state reimbursement and what we came up with in state reimbursement. So, it is very close between the two, between the renovate as new and a new building.
Can you say what those numbers are?
I'm sorry?
Can you say what those numbers are?
Well, we're looking at potential eligible costs with a renovation and addition of, I had about $10,869,000 and versus almost $7.5 million eligible cost on the new construction. I do need to take a look at the eligible cost on that $10,869,000 just to because that does not take into account the overage on the square foot area. So, I do want to make sure everybody's aware of that. I think once you do take into account that percentage overage in square foot, then we'll be much closer in our reimbursement, our state reimbursement
What's
numbers.
the total project cost for renovations and new, and it's hard to read?
So the total project cost for a renovation as new is $34,685,000. And what we're projecting for total project cost on new construction is $36,182,000.
That's gross or no, it's not?
Gross.
That's gross. What's now the city share, the city shares, how do they differ? I can't
Well,
see
the
that.
city shares are a little bit, because I did not take into account the overage on the square foot area on the renovate as new. So the city shares are really not comparable, because I have to take into account that the eligible costs will be reduced by the square foot overage. That was not taken into account on the renovate as new in my scenario.
Can you do that? I mean, is that?
It's really gonna be, we're very close on the new construction. It's probably going to be extremely close on the renovate as new. I think they had $8.3 million, what they projected. We're probably going to be within that area.
what's the, so, and on the renovations, or on the new build new, what's the state reimbursement on that?
I
I can't see
anticipated
that far.
about 7.5 million.
So, so 7.5 million.
And I think Friar, Bob, would you have?
For new 7.1.
7.1. And then what'd you have for the renovators new?
8.7.
We're probably going to end up being around there once I take into consideration the square foot overage.
So it's, the two projects are $1.5 million apart, and then we're gonna get $1.5 million less, so it's net to Norwalk $3 million more. Right?
No, the 1.5 carries through. It's 1.5 difference in overall project cost and 1.5 difference in the reimbursement costs.
Right, so total's $3 million, right, or no?
No.
Cause if the renovation is new is 34,650, the new construction's 36,182, so that's $1.5 million difference, right? Oh, that's the gross cost.
Yes.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Well, yeah, so the gross cost of the project, we gotta fund $1.5 million more.
Yes.
And then we're gonna get, by building new instead of,
You're gonna get one,
we're
about
gonna
$1.5
get
million
1.5 less.
Yes,
So
okay, so then.
Norwalk's gonna have to find $3 million more,
Right.
new versus reimbursed. I mean, our net cost,
You're right.
right?
Yeah.
The math is right? Okay. Which is, I mean, you know, look, this is an 81-year-old building, which you've already said, the layout's suboptimal, the circulation's suboptimal. It's suboptimal, and it's 81 years old. For $3 million, we could get a brand-new school. Is there any way, do you guys look at, life expectancy or whatever, I forget the term they use, you know, for a school building?
Like
Yeah,
cycle
but it's-
analysis.
So like after, if you do a renovation as new on an 81-year-old building, is that got the same
Renovation is-
future as a new building?
No, well, the renovation is new, at a minimum, it's a 20-year.
Right.
Lifespan on every system. With a new building, with newer technologies and being able to build it from the ground up, you're gonna be much better than that.
So what are you saying, like 20 years versus,
Say 30 at a minimum.
okay, okay.
And what about if operating cost wise?
Operating cost wise, you're gonna have a lot more better options, with a new building. Just not having to work, around an existing structure to design your systems to the new building.
Now, this old building, they have window air conditioners and all those?
Yeah, we have included air conditioning costs in both.
So even in the old structure, you could get ducts and all that stuff?
Yeah.
Central air, you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
But-
Okay.
We have central air,
I
right?
know we have.
But I just wanna look at when you build new, it's 10,000 square feet less. So in terms of operating expenses, air conditioning, heating, you are not heating 10,000 square feet year round, generally
Right.
speaking, except chiller season.
Yep, and then what about, one of our projects, and I don't know if you all looked at this, but on our Ponus Ridge project, it's not part of the project, but we're designing it to take solar panels on the roof, and we're gonna do one of these leaseback deals. Would that be doable on either one of these buildings?
Absolutely.
The renovate is new or the new construction?
Yes, because if, you put the roof on about, 17 years ago, I think it was, you're gonna be due for a new
You have to
roof
do it
anyway,
for-
so if you, the state likes to see, not the ballasted systems, but the clamped down, PD systems,
Right.
so you can do
Yeah,
that.
we've just been through that. It's been a really interesting experience, hasn't it now? Yeah. Okay, well, I don't know if there are any questions from the audience about this at all. We thank you for your time.
Yeah, I
Mr.
have a
Kimmel?
question. If the city were to switch gears on this particular project, how does that affect deadlines?
Well, I think they probably have enough from I'm not the expert, Jim is probably the answer to answer, but I mean, from an EDO 49 perspective, I don't think we could do it, right?
Well, if you get the funding, yeah, we can do it.
The money's the problem.
Right, I mean, Friar did provide.
Would there be
experts.
another process that we would have to go through?
It's a different box you check on the EDO
Right.
I don't mean
49
with the
for
state.
new construction.
With the city, input, public
Well,
hearings, neighborhood, things like that.
As you heard, we're short on every front. The capital budget is about to get wrapped up. We, at this point in time, do not have enough money to to proceed with all these projects and file EDO 49s for them on June 30th. So, we know this has been brewing, this is the first time this has really been laid out, you know, so specifically and so clearly. So now we have this on our table, and it's March 25th. So, you know, we don't have a lot of time. I don't think, based on the initial dialogue we had with the mayor, you know, to get some kind of supplemental appropriation, you know, we're kind of a little late in the game. And, you know, the city has other capital needs as well. But, you know, they've left the door open. So that's why we need to get all these numbers down. We now have all these numbers. We now know the magnitude of the issue. And, you know, we're gonna have to sharpen our pencils and figure out what we're gonna do. And obviously, you know, part of the really the root of the problem here is that the whole reason the city's spending over $150 million for this project is, one, we did nothing for 15 years and our buildings are falling apart. But really, the biggest driver is we've got a shortfall of 900 seats that we need to find a place for these kids to go to school. Those portables at Jefferson are over 20 years old, and they're beyond their design life. And if you recall, a few years ago, we had a disaster in August right before school started with mold, all sorts of stuff. So we cannot continue on that path. And so we need to build the 2 new schools. So regardless, we've got to proceed with Columbus at Ealing, and we really have to proceed with, you know, the Norwalk Global Academy, the old Columbus, because that's where we're adding our new seats. You know, and I think as much as, you know, Jefferson and Cranberry have been in the works for years, you know, those seats are existing. So I think that's our challenge, how we're gonna figure this out. You know, we needed to have all this, we needed to hear the presentation from these gentlemen to understand, you know, the difference between renovating as new and building a new building. Now we have that. Now we can, you know, have some serious discussions with the city and figure out how we're gonna master this. Because, you know, this literally, I mean, I think Jim called me about this shortfall. We're talking about, you know, it's only been a few weeks. You know, as all these numbers started coming in, and this cost of estimating, and as I understand it, you know, I wrote down the language that was used. Tom, I think, was being very polite, but the fact is, you know, when we first went with Silver Petroselli's numbers, you know, they were slashed by someone on the city side who said, oh, it doesn't cost that much. How Bob Barron was such an expert, I really don't know, but he apparently was. And ironically, as you heard him speak, or you heard tonight, the Silver Petroselli original numbers were exactly correct. And we should have stuck with those numbers, and then we wouldn't be looking at this. But the fact is, you know, this is where we are, and we're gonna have to figure out a plan. And that's why we get paid the big bucks here on the Board of Ed, to solve these problems, which, you know, I don't know what, you know, we're just gonna have to look. We're gonna have to prioritize, we're gonna have to figure out how we can do this.
This really helps them.
And if we can get, you know, if we can get a few, you know, some more dollars from the city, obviously that's the answer, but there's no way we can resolve all this, you know, with an appropriation this fiscal year, or this coming fiscal year, so. You know, we'll be sharpening our pencils, and Tom, your work is not yet done. I know you thought it was, but it's not. So, Dr. Adamowski?
Sure, if I can get Tom back up here, I just wanted to address the sheet that you received tonight. So, as you know, we've had great support from the mayor in terms of funding these projects. We all realize we're playing catch-up for many years of neglect. But nonetheless, we have a plan. We keep knowing more about the plan and making progress toward it. So I did discuss this issue with the mayor, and I would like to have the opportunity to come back to you at your next meeting a month from now with a specific proposal that will address this. And the mayor and I feel that working together, we can find a creative solution to cover this. The mayor has already agreed to waive the city inspection fees, which total some $4 million. And so that will take care of the Jefferson issue in and of itself. However, looking beyond that, it may be necessary to defer one of the other projects for a year and then refund that, similar to what's happening with Jefferson currently, in order to cover these projects. As has been alluded to a couple of times tonight, I think there is increasing awareness and concern that the amount of work that was recommended for Cranberry may not be adequate to its long-term operation. And I'll give you a couple of examples. The upgrading of heating and central air conditioning, is projected to become a very large operational cost, given the single glass panes of windows that envelop the building. Another example is the exterior doors, the exterior classrooms doors, which are no longer recommended or allowed for security purposes, because they present an additional security issue. So I think we have to go back and we have to look at Cranberry. We have to look at closing the gap here. As Mike alluded to, the initial estimates that the Board of Education had and submitted for these buildings were just about spot on in terms of their adequacy. Former finance director, in an attempt to meet a dollar amount that he was comfortable with, arbitrarily reduced various of these projects. Norwalk has not done this work for many, many years, so this is a learning experience. And the learning experience is that you cannot meet some codes, right? The minute you touch a building, you have to bring the entire building up to code. And you can't renovate just part of the building and meet all codes. You have to renovate it all, because heating systems and cooling systems and all of that encompass the entire building. And so there was a lack of knowledge and awareness on the part of the former finance director in making those recommendations, and we need to deal with that now. But again, this is a learning experience, and hopefully everybody has learned that as we approach further projects, future projects, we need to follow the cost estimation recommendations. But I'm confident that we're working together with the mayor, we will come up with a solution that would address the adequate and responsible completion of these projects, and perhaps also address additional needs at Cranberry School. So he and I have had one discussion. We're going to have another and look at the specifics of how this would work in terms of the city's bonding schedule and our construction schedules. And I'd like to come back to you at your next meeting with a specific proposal at that point that would have the mayor's support.
Okay, that's great.
Dr. Adamowski, did you and Mayor Rowland have any discussion related to what we just discussed about Columbus?
No. Not specifically on Columbus. We did talk about Cranberry, and we did talk about the cost projections. He is aware that the cost of a new building at Columbus is very, very close to the cost of renovation as new. I think the mayor views that as a judgment call on the part of the Board of Education as to which is most feasible.
Fair enough.
So Dr. Adamowski, at our next facilities meeting in April, you'll come back with an update and recommendations.
Right, and it will be as to how this gap is closed and how we proceed forward.
And Bruce, just so you know, in kind of a formal discussion I had with the mayor a few weeks ago, I did talk to him about, we want to think long and hard how much money we want to put into the existing Cranberry building, and that I personally thought we should investigate, looking into building a new school, a new structure there instead of putting money into the existing structure. And he was not opposed.
Certainly a lot of space. It wouldn't be to work with. Dealing with
Well,
Cranberry.
apparently the site isn't as good as we think, but anyway, it's definitely, we could do something.
Oh,
But anyway, well, stay tuned, come back next month. We don't have a quorum, so we cannot approve the minutes. And our best wishes to Brian Meek, obviously, as well as the Barbara Heinrich. And if there's no further comments, this meeting will be adjourned. Motion, please. Second, all in favor? 7:24. We wrap this up.
Is this thing still running?
Pretty good.